Hi, my name is Sara, and I have never wanted to have sex.
Sara lives in a little cabin in southern Sweden with her cats.
I identify as asexual. I guess the default definition of that would be a person who experiences little to no sexual attraction. So that's the label I use. I do have quite a complicated relationship to labels, but yeah, that's what I've settled on.
Let's jump back to her teenage years to try to understand how she came to terms with her sexuality and what led her to start using this label.
I was 16 when I first heard the word at all, and it was a friend of mine who started talking about this radio program she'd heard where there'd been an interview with somebody who identified as asexual. And as she talked about it, I kind of felt, oh, that might be me. Should maybe check that out. And I said so to this friend. And then I did absolutely nothing for several years. I just kind of relaxed in the knowledge that I can check this out later when I've decided if I want to or not. And then a few years down the line, I kind of felt it might be time for me to get some more information. And at that point, I, like many others, just went on Google and started reading up and listening to podcasts and watching interviews, and eventually I kind of decided that I would identify as this.
As she mentioned before, she's a little bit torn when it comes to using labels at all.
I spent quite a lot of my teens not even having a language for it. I had no words, no language to describe what I felt or didn't feel, and it's not a very good place to be. So when I actually heard the word, first I had something to type into the search engine. I've tried typing in other things into the search engine just to kind of see what comes up, and it's not good. It's going to be really confusing. So that was one thing. This label means that a language becomes accessible to you. And if you don't have a language, it's really, really hard to explore your own thoughts and feelings, and it's hard to explain to others and communicate them. So I think that was one of the biggest things, really. That it means that I can now actually talk about it in a way that I couldn't. The other part is, if you have a word, you can gather around it and you can actually find a community. I guess those are the main reasons. But I do have quite a flexible way of looking at labels. I don't approve of trying to fit yourself into one. I'm much more pro a sort of flexible way of looking at them. Tweak the label to fit you. Also, you're allowed to change throughout a lifetime. It's just a word. It's a word you use, it's a tool, and if that tool no longer serves you, then by all means don't use it anymore. It doesn't make your decision to have used it previously any less valid.
Labels and definitions are an always ongoing discussion within the LGBTQIA+ community, and Sara has a comment on this.
However many labels we divide people into, there's always going to be a grey zone, and that's totally fine. It's great. It just shows that people are complex and diverse, and it's lovely. And I know that within the community this is so widely discussed. Do we need a more precise definition of what asexuality is? And I disagree with that, because I just feel like that would be limiting ourselves, and when we try to kind of fit ourselves into a very precise definition, we end up perhaps not exploring our own identities as much as we would maybe need to. Well, in the end, it's about liking ourselves and feeling comfortable.
And while we're discussing labels and definitions, Sara wants to clarify something.
There is a difference between sexual attraction and romantic attraction. There are definitely asexual people who fall in love and who want relationships, and then there are people who don't, regardless of sexuality. I know several people who have been quite confused concerning their identity because it gets so muddled up in society. Oh, I can't be asexual because I fall in love, and it's really not the case. It's probably worth clarifying.
And what about Sara?
For me personally, I have no plans on having a relationship. I'm not saying it's never going to happen, just as I would never say that I'm never going to have sex. But again, I'm not met a person who I could see myself in a relationship with. Quite happy on my own, and I have lovely friends and family, and that's more than enough.
When she looks back on her life so far, this whole thing hasn't really been a huge struggle for her.
Sexuality was never something that worried me a whole lot, even growing up. I kind of always felt that it is what it is, and that's okay. So it was never something that I had a lot of anxiety over, or it wasn't really something that I felt was particularly hard. The idea of talking about it, however, was something that was a little scarier, I must say. When it comes to asexuality, it's quite common that people don't really know what it is. They've misunderstood it, and you end up doing a lot of explaining. Whenever the question comes up, you always have to be ready to go back to basics and educate, and that's a role that some people are more comfortable with than others.
And it has been a journey for her, having discussions about this.
The first time was nerve-wracking, to be honest. I didn't really know where to start. I was quite worried about, how do I explain this in the right way? How do I make it simple enough? How do I explain? And that seemed very important to me, that the conversation went a certain way. First time round was with really good friends, and it was fine, even though it was an experience. And I'm not going to say that the second time was a whole lot better, not the third time either, but really it was just about doing it. And the more you do it, the better it becomes. And now I'm kind of at a point where I can start that conversation at any end, and I don't really care how it goes. I'm not worried what people will throw at me. Question-wise, I think I might have heard every question in the book, and I have a default answer basically to go to. That's quite a good place to be, I think. But yeah, it took time, and every time somebody asks me about my identity, it's a bit of a conversation. You're going to be there a while. I do think it's important to remember that you never have a responsibility to educate the people around you. That should always be something you do on your own terms.
She made a decision early on that she stuck to this far.
Something that I decided pretty much from the get-go, and that's been very important to me always, is not to make a big deal out of this, because it never has been to me. I decided early on that I would not try to shoehorn the subject into conversations. I would be happy to talk about it if the subject came up, or if somebody asked. And that's kind of what I've done, and that's worked very well for me, because I've always felt it was really important not to make a bigger deal out of it than it actually is. It's not something that should define me as a person, and it's something I'm cool about, and I would never start a conversation by saying, you know what, I'd like to tell you something. It just doesn't sit right with me. It works for other people, and that's great, but never really felt I could do that.
That means that she never really had a big coming out moment.
All the people around me basically know by now, but that was a process over years, and I felt like it's been quite good in the way that it's been very non-dramatic, and that's been important to me personally, because it doesn't bother me.